Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today for our entry in the Classroom Management Mastery series, talking about impactful assignment feedback and making the most of student assessment through Waypoint outcomes, talking specifically about written assignment feedback and the Waypoint platform that we use to provide that and engage with students. Before we dive right into the subject matter today, I do want to, just remind people that this is a part of the Classroom Management Mastery series. If you are able to attend at least 9 of the 11 or watch a recording of 9 of the 11 recorded sessions this year, and then do a quick follow-up activity, you will be eligible for a badging opportunity here at the end of the year, which is approaching more quickly than anybody could have anticipated. It's crazy to think that we're already in our 8th session of this series. We're very, very happy with the progress we've made and the follow-up and the participation from all of you throughout, which has made it really very successful. And actually the next one, the TLC presentation we'll be doing, will be kind of recapping a lot of the faculty takeaways that we were able to record and observe from your feedback by attending these sessions. So we're super happy and excited to be bringing that to you next month. But we're getting close to that, close to being finished with the year. So very, very excited about that. And thank you for all of you that have attended previous sessions, and we'll continue on that journey toward the badge at the end of the year. We have a couple other, upcoming events we wanted to mention briefly before we get started. There's a commencement coming up just this weekend. It's very, very exciting. The fantastic thing about the silver lining, of some of these, situations we find ourselves in with the global pandemic is that virtually we are way more accessible to things like graduation. We're able to participate maybe in a different way that we wouldn't have been able to this year. So silver lining, there's a lot of very cool graduation things that you can be involved in virtually as a faculty member. So please watch your email for more details and do participate in that. It's going to be an exciting event to be taking place for sure. Coming up too, we have another Get Centered session talking about the gift of presence using videos meaningfully with online students. I'm really looking forward to that one coming up tomorrow. CanvasCon is free for attendees. That's the yearly conference that Canvas typically puts on. It's a fantastic conference, and they've gone all virtual, and it's all free. So please do sign up for that, register for that, and be sure to attend as much as you can. That's on October 15th this year. And then on October 20th, the Forbes School of Business and Technology is going to be holding the Virtual Thought Leader Summit Conference. Very exciting to be attending that this year as well virtually. So lots of things coming up. It's going to be a busy fall. But we got lots of exciting things coming up here. So I want to give just a quick overview of some of the things that I want to go over today, and I'm really looking forward to your contributions in the chat as well. I have some questions that I'm hoping we can have a really meaningful conversation about written assignment feedback and our experience as faculty members. So what I want to do is start by kind of highlighting some of the functionalities in Waypoint that exist to help with efficiencies. Maybe a couple of these things existed that you may not have been aware of or have used as often. So I'm hoping to highlight some tools to make providing meaningful feedback, an efficient process for all of us faculty members as well. While we're talking about, some of the efficiencies, we also want to talk about some of the quality, best practices. We're going to touch a little bit on some of those, just the things that, we've seen in classrooms or not seen, or, based on our experiences. We've got some best practices we want to outline and ask for some of yours to share as well, because there's a lot of experts in written assignment feedback in the room today that I want to be able to tap into. So we're also going to be speaking of tools that exist. The Waypoint Universal Library was something we're going to talk about. There's a library of comments that exists within Waypoint that I'm not sure that all faculty are aware of, but we're going to ask for your contributions in building it out a little bit more and getting your feedback and what you want that to look like. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we have a couple of guest speakers here today as well. I'm really excited today to have Tricia Lauer, our Associate Vice President of Learning Assessment, and a member of her team, Nichole Perri, an assessment specialist, here to talk about a lot of the things that as faculty members I don't think we're as privy to. A lot of the back end things that Waypoint, some of the assessment data and the outcomes data that Waypoint provides us is absolutely crucial to our accreditation and many other initiatives and planning that we do. And Tricia Tricia and Nichole are here today to talk a little bit about that we might not get to see as much into on a day-to-day while you're in there assessing and giving feedback. So I'm very, very excited for them to be able to give that context after we talk a little bit about Waypoint and written assignment feedback. So, I guess we can kind of start with the question of, why is written assignment feedback so important? Why is this process, so crucial, especially for our situation? And I was actually thinking back, I've had a few instances over the last couple months to just have some context into what other universities look like, what their systems look like, what it means to teach at another institution. And Tricia Kirk and I were actually talking this morning about what a unique situation we have with our faculty and what a gift it is, honestly, to have such fantastic curriculum and all of these rubrics and assignments already built out for us. To where we really have the opportunity to be outstanding in the written assignment feedback that we provide. If we were in a different situation where faculty were like having to build out their whole courses and curriculums and build quizzes and do all these other things, we might not get to have such an emphasis on written assignment feedback that I feel we have the gift to do. So we're very, very fortunate in that situation. We as a university, we take a lot of time to listen to our students' feedback and listen to alumni feedback, and we try to take pulse checks of our students. And the thing that we consistently see is students really, really do value the feedback from their instructors, and they especially value it in a timely manner. Just the nature of our courses and how fast they move along. Those themes that we see time and time again is they really, really want that level of engagement. And I would almost go as I would go as as far to say as it is maybe one of the most crucial ways that we engage with our students in our platform and the way that we interact. So I only mention that because I think it's important to consider just why we spend all this time talking about it, and why every once in a while you hear, and there is an underlying cynicism sometimes of, students don't read feedback and everything like that. But I was thinking the other day, it's really kind of our responsibility to make them want to read our feedback. Let's give them something worth reading. So I want to have this conversation with you today. I'm really excited about it, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, as you can probably tell. So to get into Waypoint, there are a couple different main access points in the classroom that we use. A while back, we actually added a shortcut on the left navigation of the classroom, so you can get there in one click no matter what assignment you're working on. But you can always also access it through the specific written assignment page. If you're on there looking at the instructions, there's always that little load button down there at the very bottom. But the shortcut in the left nav is really the quickest and easiest way to get there at any given point in time. And I wanted to mention just a few items about the ongoing improvement of Waypoint. I think we could have done a whole different presentation today if we wanted to about the evolution of Waypoint over time. Thinking back to, 10 years ago at Ashford, we were using Waypoint, but in a very, very different iteration. So to see it evolve throughout the years, and the way that faculty members leave feedback throughout the years has been a fascinating evolution. I'm sure we could talk much more about that. But some of the enhancements that we've seen this year, one that we've been waiting for, frankly, as long as we've been having to click to manually run Turnitin through for these assignments, we were able to get all those, get a batch option for those to run through, which has been a really, really nice enhancement we've seen good results with. I won't go too much into detail, but specifically when an assignment is submitted by a student to Waypoint, it is converted into a PDF, and we're going to be upgrading that PDF converter here in the coming months. It should be a very, very similar user experience, shouldn't be too many differences, but it should just smooth out a couple of those bumps that we sometimes see with formatting or sometimes speed. So it should be a better user experience, but overall similar. So not huge changes with that, but we'll have more details as that's coming here towards the end of the year. We want to ask for your help today in doing a little bit of a refresh of the universal comment library that is available in Waypoint. Last month, we had a session on, if you didn't catch it, on academic integrity and working with Turnitin. here in the next couple months, I believe, we're going to be having just a little bit of an update to the Turnitin experience. So once you, obviously we have the similarity score up at the top. Once you access Turnitin, it's going to look just a little bit different, but it's actually a way better user experience. It's kind of simplified, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. But that's coming down probably towards the end of this year as well. So we'll have more details once that's coming as well. So, but one of the things that I did want to mention too today is, we're going to talk about Waypoint and acknowledge, first and foremost, that it's not perfect. And we do want, your feedback on how we can specifically make it better. Our partners at Zovio are very, very committed to having an ongoing conversation with our faculty and in making products better. We've already seen that with Signals, honestly. So we're really, really happy to have their open ear, about what can make Waypoint better. What ideas do you have? So we're going to be doing our yearly classroom experience satisfaction survey here in the next month or so, and we will be sending information out. So we want your feedback because, looking at last year, we can see Waypoint down there is the third to last from the bottom. We can see that it's not one of the favorites. It's not one of the favorites. There are, shortcomings and areas of opportunity. But I think what we're hoping to highlight here today is, Tricia and team are here to, reiterate just how important it is to our assessment and some of those crucial things that we don't always see. And B, we're going to highlight some things that, maybe you didn't know before that are really going to add to some of your efficiencies in providing written assignment feedback. So we'll go ahead and start at the top of the evaluator toolbar. There's a few things here that I think maybe not all faculty are aware of or use, every day. So you might not necessarily know what they do. So up at the top in the upper left, you can see that there's actually a roster where you can drop down and you can take a look at, you can access any other student's paper from there essentially, which is nice if you know exactly who you want to go to, take a quick look at how many you have left or something like that, which is nice. But then down underneath that number one, actually, there is an option to toggle the rubric and comment library, which I would bet that not as many faculty are aware of or use it to its full capacity. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about the Waypoint comment library that's available, but that's how you switch over to view some of those comments and edit that library. Up at the top as well, by the number 2, you can see the similarity score for Turnitin and the dropdown. Always very nice to have that visibility right there, especially with that batch submit. You can just run them all and then it's ready when you're going into grade. And then for by number 3, this is something that we do see faculty, from time to time not being aware of because it's something we don't have to deal with very often. But up at the top there, you have a couple different options. You see where it says 1 submitted. So if a student has multiple submissions, you can actually click that little arrow and see multiple submissions. So maybe maybe you ask for a resubmission. You actually have to go there to make sure that you can get there to their newest submission, which is kind of a nice option, but not something we use every day. But then to the right of that, what's really handy is you are able to actually click that blue link there to download any particular assignment that a student has submitted in its original format, which is fantastic to do. Especially because we do from time to time see instances where a student has submitted a paper, but the formatting was a little bit off, and that's usually because the PDF converter actually has not done its work to its full capacity. So sometimes it's better to open that original document and check it out, or sometimes it doesn't convert. It's really nice to be able to go there, open the original document. And then by the number 4 there, you can see that we actually have the ability to change the overall grade. There's a manual ability to change the overall grade there. And then there's a couple different tools down there as well for the markup options that you have. You can sort where your comments sit. You can put them along the side. You can put them all along the bottom. You can choose if you want to highlight. There's a couple different options there. So I'm going to just check the chat super quick. There's a lot going on. So I'll see if I can catch up on that a little bit. Okay, it looks like there's a couple of people in the chat helping out with questions. So thank you so much. So I do want to mention a quick part about the Waypoint rubrics. Like I was saying, we're so fortunate to be able to have a lot of these in place for us as faculty members. We don't have to go in and build things like this, and even to have the additional feedback options below. really gives us just a fantastic baseline and starting point for our written assignment feedback. There's an option there up at the top to clear the selection if you want. And another, similar with the final score up at the top, like I had shown in the previous screen, there's an option to edit the actual numeric score there. So say, for example, a student got distinguished, but maybe you do want to, change the actual numeric score a little bit. As a faculty member, you have the ability to do that. So I think that may be something that not a lot of folks realize. And in addition to that, you can also, the observations that you choose or the additional feedback that you choose, you also have the ability to edit that. So maybe a comment works for the most part, but you want to tweak it just a little bit to fit better. You can click that edit button and make that happen as well. So lots of great tools right there within the rubrics. And just as a baseline, even to our written assignment feedback is fantastic. From the Waypoint assignment landing page, there's a couple of efficient pieces that might be helpful that a lot of folks might not realize. When you click to show your roster up there where the 2 is, when you click to open that roster, there's a couple different fields that you can actually sort by. So you can sort by a student's name if you click on top of the name. You can sort by last submission if you click on that. I always like to do that, to make sure that I'm catching, any students that may have submitted way late. They might need to tweak points just a little bit. So that's really nice to be able to submit, sort by that. You can sort by status or the view as well, which is really nice. Like I mentioned before, there's that batch submit to Turnitin option up in the upper right-hand corner where it says submit to TII. We've had a lot of success with that. Honestly, when you push it, you don't even have to sit there and wait for it. You can take a quick break and then it'll send you an email when it's done. And then as soon as you go into your papers, the score is already loaded, which is fantastic. And yeah, there's a couple different ways just to view the student access from there. So I want to take a quick, it looks like the chat is really active, which is awesome. And it looks like there's a lot of conversation going on there. But I do want to talk, just about, so we've talked about, some of the functionalities that I think can add some efficiencies. We'll get a little bit more into the Waypoint comment library here toward the end. But I wanted to talk, just about, and I've talked with my team, earlier this week as well about it. But over the years, just some of the things that we see with faculty, there are some things that some faculty do really, really, really well with written assignment feedback. But there's a lot of areas of opportunity that we see, a lot of quick wins that we think that faculty can, and maybe aren't taking advantage of, when it comes to written assignment feedback, because it can seem daunting, but there really, really are ways that you can get it done quickly and really make it impactful. So I wanted to talk through some of those today with you. And just to give like a little bit extra, context as well, I do want to tap into the expertise in the room. But I spent, when I actually first came to Ashford many, many years ago in a past life, I actually worked as our writing instructional specialist manager when our classes were so large. Many of you were there back then as well, when our classes were so large that some of our entry points had teaching assistants. And we actually focused on grading the written assignments. So I used to oversee and support the team that supported that population. So I do have, some years of experience in providing written assignment feedback, but in my role now, which is of faculty support and development manager of the classroom experience, my team is in there, working with faculty in the classroom. And I want to just talk about some of the things that we've learned over the years, or some of the things that we really, really want to encourage, as a starting point for really, impacting students with great feedback. So we'll start with the summarized feedback area of Waypoint, because I think, and the way that I like to suggest it to people, and there are lots of other ways to describe it, but basically, or this is the way I approach it, is, if a student is not even going to, if the student isn't going to read the rubric or the in-text feedback, like, can I give them a paragraph of like how exactly they did? Can I give them one meaningful paragraph of, here's a general sense of how you did? If they went no further, I want to be able to capture, at least a few things that they can take away, what they did well. And if that seems daunting, to be very specific per student, one kind of template that is easy to start with as a starting point is, to highlight something that they did really well, highlight an area of opportunity, and then, point out some kind of an artifact or resource for, further reading, maybe suggest a tool or, a resource or something like that. So that's just kind of a bare bones, type of approach. There are so many more approaches that people can take. But if you're really kind of starting out and developing, a summarized feedback that is unique, per student, I think that that's a good approach to take in general. And that's another thing, that we talk sometimes about is being able to, use templates and things like that as a tool of efficiency, but also making sure that that feedback is still very specific to that student and making sure that it is meaningful. So there's a balance. There are certain things that we feel we see ourselves typing over and over and over again, and we think sometimes, oh my gosh, there's a better way. Why am I typing this again instead of doing something smarter? And I do want to highlight just some of those things today. But if you're not already using some kind of a starter, for your assignments, or start using them as a starting point from your previous class, when it really is helpful to use as starting points, and then customize accordingly, obviously, to make sure that that's meaningful. Something we don't always see, that I think is a quick win, is addressing student by name. That's a really quick, making sure that that you're grabbing their attention there at the top. Like, yes, I read through your paper. I know who this is. And then something that we've seen, at the end, which I think can be helpful, is adding just a little bit of a signature. There's not, kind of an automated signature type situation in Waypoint. So I like to do just a simple, I add my first name at the bottom. That's how I ask my students to address me. You can add any sort of, I've seen, others leave their contact information at the bottom too, which is great. Leave your email address. There's a lot of, different little personal touches you can add there at the end, just to remind them, hey, feel free to reach out. And even mentioning that, I feel like I beat it to death, sometimes, but I say, please reach out if you have questions about my feedback or anything else. It's almost automatic part of my signature in some ways. And then I wanted to, just mention too that the written assignment feedback for us is really kind of a comprehensive. There's three main parts when I go in and I think about it. There's our summarized feedback, which is that paragraph or two that just gives a general snapshot of how things went. The rubric, which provides a lot of meaningful information to the student and to the university. And then the in-text feedback, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is really a way to customize that feedback and really engage with students in a meaningful way with that. And then something I like to do, and I've seen success with, is actually encouraging students to view their in-text feedback from the summarized feedback. So say I go way in depth on some comments, on their thesis or something like that. I'll say, hey, you did really well here. I left some comments on your paper about your thesis. Please go in and take a look and let me know if you have questions. So I'm kind of guiding them or coaxing them to make sure that they check that link. And a lot of students, might even forget that link is there with marked up comments, sometimes. So really just reminding them, especially in those first assignments, when you're building a rapport with them and saying, hey, I'm leaving you this feedback, making sure that you give them as many opportunities to do that as well is fantastic. So, but I want to pause for a moment and ask, before we dive into in-text comments, I want to ask for just some, what are some other strategies that people use with the summarized feedback area that, they think is really successful or they've seen success with? I want to take a quick pause and ask for folks to just participate in the chat and mention some strategies. I'm going to see if I can catch up with the chat a little bit too. Yes, Becky. Yes, I do. I feel like I tell that, and I think I do it for almost every assignment I do. It's like, yep, please see my comments within your paper for more specific guidance. I think that's kind of my part of my signature almost. No, yes, and attaching the Turnitin report. Yes, the ability, you can see down there in the corner, you can attach a file, which is fantastic, especially when you have a Turnitin report or something like that you need to attach so that they can easily refer to. That's perfect, Avisha. And Sherry, that's a really good strategy. I use that sometimes as well, where you have a template. And what I do, maybe it's kind of an archaic approach. I'm sure there are tools, to help with that, but I do like a big X, capital X, where I know I'm going to be filling in a specific, you did well with this, XXXXX, to where I make sure that I catch it. But that's a really good strategy, Sherry. Thanks for sharing that. And go ahead and keep posting the ideas, feel free. So when we go on to, in-text comments talking about, written assignment feedback as a, in theory, I think the first level of what we want to do is like at a bare minimum, we justify the grade. We explain, okay, here's why you didn't meet this requirement, or here's why you did well in this requirement. But really meaningful written assignment feedback goes further than that, I think. It has to engage them in conversation, or I think that one thing that sometimes we just find really, a struggle sometimes is, especially when we have a student who did really, really well in a lot of things, how do we leave them meaningful feedback if they knocked it out of the park? We have a couple ideas here that I want to share, but really using those rubrics as your guide. The more heavily weighted things, usually the ones at the top, the really, really content specific, focus more of your in-text comments on those than APA or like a minor formatting issue or a minor typo. Really focusing more on the content and sharing your experiences and your expertise. The in-text comments are a fantastic place to link out to resources. If you have them saved in your Waypoint comment library, it's really easy to do so. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is a great place to, and since you can't, especially in the summarized feedback area, actually link out as a limitation of the functionality, this is the best place to do that if you're linking. So for example, I have one that I have saved when I refer students to Grammarly. So it's like, hey, I would really suggest, doing some really thorough proofreading. Grammarly is a great tool, and then I have the link right there. So I'm able to just start typing in Grammarly and it pops up, which is really, really great. One of the things we see sometimes, which is good, and I remember, seeing marked up papers from my undergrad as well, you see just, little one-word comments. It's like, oh, this is unclear, or like, just little or more, sometimes we see more. It's really important, and it's an opportunity to ask questions to really prompt that thought. Say you needed more detail from them, ask a couple of questions. Did you consider this aspect? Maybe try researching this or incorporating another resource, being very, very specific about, how they can further that thought. Or for those students that did knock it out of the park, say, hey, did you consider this? Just as an extra little food for thought. For those students that do really well, and those students who, may struggle, telling them where they did well. Waypoint makes it really easy to highlight exactly where they did well, but tell them why. This is great because you incorporated your resources so well. This is great because you did it very succinctly. This is great because, you can save a starter that says, you did a great job on this, and then fill in the very specific things afterward. But I think telling them why they did well, is really important. And then another thing to consider is for those students who did really well is having a for further reading or for further consideration type resource available for assignments that say, hey, you seem really, really interested in this. Here's an article that takes this perspective on it. That's really, really cool to have a bank of things that you can refer students to for further reading, or a TED Talk that talks about it, something like that. And then really, to using this opportunity, like I mentioned, using your expertise, anybody can submit a paper to an online tutor or anything like that and get, feedback on writing. I mean, writing is great to coach on, especially if it's a writing course. But we know when you're working with those real world examples, and you can tie these things into how they can use this in their job and in the professional world, the more real we make it, the better. So I think that's just, one additional thought when it comes to in-text feedback. But talking about the Waypoint comment library, maybe some of you use this to an extent, so maybe some of you are not aware of it. But there's a comment library that exists within Waypoint, one that is universal, so one that has comments that are available to all users, and then one that you can save just for yourself. You can create your own comments and then save them, and they're just accessible to you. So, and how this works is it's really super simple. Is you start typing in a tag or a keyword essentially into the comment section. So I did, for this example, I typed in thesis. And then you can see a number of comments that pop up below, that start to talk about student's thesis, or talk about paragraph construction, or commas, or any number of things. And when you actually create your own library, you can create your own tags. So you can start saying, oh, I have this comment that I always use about paragraph construction. So you can just start typing the word paragraph and it pops right up. It's a really, really cool tool. If you haven't used it yet and you're looking for a way to get more efficient with your in-text feedback, would definitely suggest doing that. And, building your own library. And like I had mentioned before, we're going to throw a link to the chat in here in a little bit. To submit your ideas to, for those of you that are aware of the library, hey, we want your ideas on how we can make it better. Do you have a comment that you use all the time that you have a lot of success with that you want to share with us? We would love to add it. We're going to be doing a little bit of a refresh here at the end of the year to the comment library. So, or if you have just ideas of, oh, I want more comments about this or more comments about that, just please go into the, fill out this link. We'll leave it open for the next, couple of weeks or so while people are working through their classes. But any ideas you have to add to the library and make it better, we would really, really appreciate that. And then consider adding to your own library. So just for sake of time, I want to give plenty of time to our guest speakers here at the end, but I do want to add just a couple additional strategies that we've discussed before as a CEDL about written assignment feedback. One of those being break it up. I mean, we get into our habits and we know how we work best. But man, I know that I can't grade more than 5 papers in a sitting without taking some kind of a break. So figure out, how you have to take a break, even if you have, you only have so many hours dedicated one window to it. Find some way to get up and take a quick walk or something like that. So just to break it up in some way to give your mind just a little bit of a refresh to make sure you're doing justice, and being able to provide quality feedback. Knowing what assignments you're teaching. I mean, the first time you teach a class, obviously you're feeling out the assignments where students, struggle, where they do really well. But know that if you have, a rough draft assignment that's going to take a lot of time and it would be really meaningful to have it back early, maybe start grading a little bit earlier that week. Or if you have final papers that you want to dedicate a lot of time to, just kind of plan that out and kind of know, going into that week, okay, I got a schedule a big window of time, things like that. And I something that I do personally is I really like to set small goals for myself. It's like I know a worksheet, so well, specifically I think like, okay, I want to aim to shoot at least 3 in-text comments per student. So that's like my minimum. So I make sure that I'm, not neglecting those students that knocked it out of the park, but I'm also not, over commenting maybe on students who might have struggled a little bit more. So giving yourself some kind of a standard, or goal with each one is better to be consistent. Earlier is always better. Students are really, really appreciate early feedback. We see it in, and of course, surveys. We see it in all the feedback that we get from students is the quicker, the better. And we know that it's hard to do everything else that we're doing and be fast about it as faculty members. So it's hard to balance that quality and the speed. But, if you haven't already, consider having a conversation with your lead faculty after you get your next IQR as well. That's a really good place to say, hey, take a look at what I'm doing. Like, is this on par with what you're thinking? If their feedback hasn't already clarified. And then I would also absolutely encourage you to talk with your faculty support and classroom consultants and coaches from the CEDL. And we are more than willing to go in and take another look and confirm that you're doing well or give some advice where needed. So, but just being, aware of it and having thoughts about it and just keeping that conversation going. And you're here today, learning about it and, willing to think about it. So we appreciate that. And just your continued, improvement on the journey. So I do want to turn things over to Tricia Lauer, our Associate Vice President of Learning Assessment, who's going to talk a little bit about, like I had said, just some of the super meaningful outcomes and assessment pieces that come from Waypoint that we don't get to see as faculty members as much. We go in and we do the work and we engage and we assess, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. And I'm really, really happy to have our assessment team here today to talk about some of those.
Thank you, Cole. Nikki has a few slides that we'd love to share if we're able to do that, please.
Oh, yes. Let me bump you up. Apologies.
Thanks. No problem. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. There we go.
My name is Tricia Lauer, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Learning Assessment, and I'm joined this afternoon by one of my colleagues and associates, Nichole Perri, who is an assessment specialist who actually supports programs both in the Forbes School of Business and Technology as well as the College of Arts and Sciences. And we're very grateful for Cole's invitation to come and visit with you this afternoon to share a little bit of, as he called it, behind the scenes goings on that happened with Waypoint that we thought would be helpful insight and context for you. Earlier today, I was actually in the Curriculum and Assessment Steering Committee meeting, and we were talking about assessment data, and many faculty actually didn't realize how powerful a tool is, Waypoint is for us, and how it's been very helpful in terms of accreditation, regulatory, and compliance affairs, but most importantly, in helping faculty make data-driven decisions about their programs and courses. Nikki?
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to share an image that Cole shared a couple of times throughout his presentation, as well as an image you all see every time you go in to grade a Waypoint assignment. So here's a rubric, but what you may not know is behind each content criterion in the rubric are all of our learning outcomes. So our course learning outcomes specific to the particular course, our program learning outcomes, institutional learning outcomes, and if applicable, general education learning outcomes. So every time you all go in and you grade an assignment and you select a performance level, you're actually giving us data points. So whether you know it or not, many of you have given us tens of hundreds of data points just by grading these rubrics or grading these assignments.
I'd like to expand upon what Nikki just shared. So Cole mentioned at the beginning of our presentation that we're actually using a second version of Waypoint. There was actually something, we called it Waypoint 1.0 years and years ago, and it was much more rudimentary than what we're using today. But since the onset of using Waypoint, Ashford University alone has gathered over 1 trillion data records related to student learning. And so to Nikki's point, I'd like to thank all of you, because whether or not you even realized it, you were contributing to us being able to make decisions about student learning. And just a few things that I would like to mention, even going back to 2012. In 2012, we did initially apply for accreditation through WASC, and we were not accredited. And one of the concerns was that we didn't have a very sophisticated way of assessing learning in an online environment. And also, how do we assure in a class where we're offering many sections starting every week that we're offering a quality education to our students? And whether or not that statement is fair or not, we could talk about that all night, but I know that we promised you'd be done here at the top of the hour. So what we had decided to do was incorporate Waypoint, which basically marries grading and assessment into all of our courses. And what that allows us to do is to meet our accreditors' needs, provide valuable feedback, as Cole mentioned, and also give our faculty data with which to make curricular and programmatic improvements aimed at student learning. I can't tell you how many times we have been commended on Waypoint from program review external reviewers because we're able to measure outcomes data across all courses. The fact that we've been able to scale this is very enviable and is the envy of most institutions. We're able to get data pretty much just in time. If you ever sat with Nikki or anyone on my team, you would be able to see that we can pull data, and Nikki's going to talk a little bit more about that later, really almost immediately after a faculty grades an assignment, and we can see how students are doing on specific learning outcomes, which is very useful when we want to support our students and be able to be agile and innovative in the classroom. WASC, as many of you know, commended our assessment practices when they visited in April 2019, which really speaks volumes to the fact that we were able to do pretty much a 180-degree turnaround on our assessment processes in 7 years. Many institutions don't have program learning outcomes or even course learning outcomes, and the fact that we have learning outcomes at multiple levels, as well as the ability to assess all of them, really is commendable to all of you. So want to thank all of you on this call and all of the faculty, both full-time and associate. I had the privilege of talking about quality in academics to members of the United States Department of Education, and they were really blown away by the ability that we have to use Waypoint to do our large-scale operations of collecting data and making meaningful decisions based on those data sets. It's pretty rare, and it's pretty exciting that we have the opportunity to use a system. And I think, as Cole mentioned, there are some pain points with the system, but something that's been really nice is that we have been able to partner with Zovio over the years. And really, the faculty at Ashford have been able to drive what the product looks like and has been able to do. So that's been a really important piece. Moving forward, given that there's so many institutions that are using remote learning or online learning, and questions have come up about credit hour and how to ensure quality in online programs, what we have been able to share to our regulators, to our accreditors, and to other government bodies about how we are ensuring quality programs has really been a feather in our cap, if you will. So I hope that this is a bit of compelling argument for the use of Waypoint. I know there was a question in the chat about using Canvas, and really honestly what we're able to get from Waypoint, which Nikki's going to show, is such rich data that SpeedGrader in Canvas is not really able to provide. We do partner, as Cole mentioned, with Zovio for enhancements in that area, but for right now we really are committed to Waypoint and hopeful that some of the feedback that you might have about improving the product, that we're able to move the needle so that it's a better product for you to use when you're grading. Thank you.
And here I wanted to show an example of the back end of Waypoint. So what you all don't necessarily get to see when we are doing our mapping. So you have the rubric content criteria on the left-hand side. Normally you all would see the different performance levels, but here you can see that these content criterion are mapped to our course learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, and institutional and general education learning outcomes. So all this data goes from our rubrics, which we create in consultation with the lead faculty. We then input them into Waypoint. You all grade and assess the assignments, which give us those data points. We then funnel that information into Tableau, our visual software, and that information goes to a variety of different stakeholders. It can go to the lead faculty, it can go to the college. We use it with program review. We also send it to WASC, as Tricia mentioned, as well as the Department of Education when they need our data. So really it's going to a variety of different people, but for you all specifically, I wanted to show you a snapshot of Tableau and really show you how we can drill down with this data. So here's a little snippet of Tableau. We're able to look at individual courses and get very, very granular with our aggregate learning outcome data. So we can look at things, we can go as deep into, if we wanted to look at female students in Business 105 who are military affiliate, who are between the ages of 40 and 49, how they performed on CLO2 in the week 3 assignment. We can get that detailed. We typically don't need to, but that is how much data we have in Waypoint. Thanks to the rubrics and the CLO and course learning outcome and program learning outcome mapping. So all that data, it can seem a bit overwhelming. So we want to use it in a meaningful way. So what I come in as an assessment specialist is we help collect that data, but then we also help our faculty review the data. And in reviewing that data, it helps us make meaningful changes. And there are a variety of ways that we present the data to faculty. We can do it at the course learning outcome level. So I'm going to show you in a second a course snapshot. We can do it at the programmatic learning, programmatic level. We also have our assessment plans as well as program review. All that data we're able to collect, but specifically the course snapshot. Now, if you are a full-time faculty or a course lead, you're probably familiar with this document, but if you're not, this is a document that shows the course learning outcome data for a particular course. It's generally presented when the course is about to be revised, and it helps the faculty member who's revising that course get an overarching view of how the course is performing. And we also provide recommendations based on the data. And again, all this data is collected through those Waypoint rubrics. So we have the CLOs, we can look at how the CLOs are performing overall, as well as the week-to-week rubric performance. And as I'm going in and I'm creating this and pulling data, I'm looking for certain patterns. Are CLOs improving over time? Are they declining over time? Is there an area or a specific CLO or a specific assignment that we notice a big dip or a big increase? All that data really helps us when we're making changes. So here's an example of some action items, an abridged example of some action items that we would do once we analyze this data and we work in consultation with our faculty. So we could revise specific assignments. We could redo mapping because maybe the mapping isn't aligned properly. We can also promote rubric norming and ensuring that faculty are all grading and assessing the rubrics properly. Also, I'm sure many of you have seen the feedback that maybe your lead faculty give you in the announcements. That also sometimes comes from looking at the data and revising a course. So in all these ways, we're able to take that Waypoint data that you all give us by grading the assignments, and we're able to do so many things with it and make so many improvements on behalf of our students because of that. So that was our spiel. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate you grading those rubrics and helping us with this meaningful data.
Thank you, Cole.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for your time and that context. Behind some of that, I think there was a couple of really good questions in the chat that I wanted to make sure we got to. I know there was some confusion about filling out rubrics when students haven't submitted, and I think we covered that one. Avisha had a question about talking about a little bit about the rationale behind the grade point percentages.
Yes, so those were originally determined by the faculty council. That was the faculty governing body at the time. And given that the points can be changed within Waypoint, felt like those were fairly appropriate ranges for the different performance levels. We don't gather data. I mean, we can gather data on the grading percentages, but from my team's perspective, we're more interested in the performance levels. And given that those ranges existed, felt like we wanted to take the faculty's lead on what those were.
That makes sense. Great. I think that was the only unaddressed question. So we can give everybody 10 minutes back tonight. And thanks so much again to our guest speakers today and for everybody for engaging in the conversation about meaningful written assignment feedback. Keep thinking about it, keep evolving, and we appreciate you. And we will see you for the next Classroom Management Mastery Series session. Thanks so much.